Right. Welcome back, everyone, to the new series where Levi chats cybersecurity. We've done a few fireside chats with Levi and want to make this a fairly regular thing where we talk to Levi about all things cybersecurity, including careers, veterans' roles in the cybersecurity community, and whether your McAfee actually does anything. So, Levi, uh, really stoked to have you on. Introduce yourself. Let us know a little bit about who you are and where you're coming from.
This is not paid for by McAfee, we promise. But if they want to sponsor us, yeah, no, Levi Horsley. Wyatt and I went to school together. Was in the Army from 2009 to 14 and enjoyed my time there, but it ended early and abruptly, and I kind of had to figure out what I was going to do, and I ended up in cybersecurity. So
Well, sweet. So tell us a little bit about kind of your role into cybersecurity after leaving the army.
yeah, currently I'm at a financial institution, and I do a couple different things, but my primary area of responsibility is vulnerability management. So anything from talking to the executives and calming them down and saying, I know you saw this news article, but we need to look in our environment and see what the problem is first. Looking at our vulnerability software, configuring that to be better, and then partnering and building relationships with our business units to say, hey, here are your vulnerabilities and problems. How can I help you solve them? How can I help you understand them? So that relationship building is pretty big. Um, Threat intelligence, so staying on top of kind of the latest threats, trends, uh, and that's kind of my cornerstone piece at the company that I'm at right now. And I do some other things that I get either rotated on or off of. Like we have an on-call schedule that's pretty standard in IT. I've worked with incident response, which is where you react to some kind of problem that's hit your environment. Either resources are going down or you're being attacked in a malicious way. Um, yeah, there's a lot to cyber. So I think even 15 years ago, if you were in IT, you were just an IT guy. And now, even if you're a cybersecurity guy, you could run into two cyber people who, they can speak the same language, but they do totally different things at their day job. It's really interesting. And just even the prevalence of cyber insurance and all of the experts that go along with that process is, a pretty new phenomenon. So
And how did you start out in this career field? Was this something you kind of thought about when you were in the army, when you were leaving the army, and what
no.
path took you to where you're at today?
When I left the army, I was a bartender. So, yeah, I think a lot of people have been there before. I still love making drinks, but uh, no, it's interesting that you say that too, because just this week, we were looking at, some interviewing processes, and I must be getting old or something, because now you have like, what seems like kids coming out with bachelor's and master's in cybersecurity. And it's interesting to see that, while that is very respected, it is not as respected as someone who has, not the degree, but they have 5 years of the exact kind of experience that you're looking for to fill a role. So it'll be interesting to see if just kind of the old guard has to die off, the people that, cybersecurity degrees weren't around when they went through that time in their life, or whether or not how preferential that will be. I think a lot of people tend to think of cybersecurity as sort of, um, not but like one of the peaks of information technology. Like you need to understand networking. Ideally, you're kind of good with people and can do like help desk or relate to others, and that personable skill is important. And when you combine all of these things and you add on a layer of, not only do I know how they work, I know how they can be manipulated. That way I can try and defend them. So it's definitely like a developed skill. So I don't know. We'll have to see if some of the more official cybersecurity degrees or credentials, end up leveling out with sort of the real world experience. But after I got out of the army, I was pretty directionless for a couple of years. I started bartending, and I started in help desk. So it was, I think it was like 12 or 14 bucks an hour working as a contractor for a guy doing, really basic IT. And I learned things about computers, and that job led to another job, which led to another job, which led to, eventually me specializing in a little bit more networking, computer networking, and then cybersecurity.
So for people, you mentioned kind of, there are cybersecurity degrees, there are cybersecurity programs, but what is kind of the bare minimum that someone needs to have to be successful? And maybe what are some of the certifications and some of the pathways that people can take to show, you as an employer that they have what it takes to succeed in your career field?
Yeah. One pathway that I can't speak very well to is that cybersecurity degree pathway, because that's not, the one that I took. I know that employers right now are still, at least of the ones that I see, are if they have anything other than a junior role, they're really looking for someone who can step in, take the job, hit the ground running. So ideally, if you're looking for cyber, you're looking for sort of a junior analyst, somewhere on a team that can help mentor you. It's so much faster than learning on your own. And in order to be able to maybe jump to that role, you first need the stepping stone of really help desk. I mean, some kind of IT experiments or system administrator, that says that you understand networks. There's so many. Yeah, I actually love this about cybersecurity. Instead of being like a medical doctor where you either have it or you don't, and it's super formal and super long. It's a huge upfront investment. IT is totally different. If they're desperate for people, they'll take anyone and train you on the job. And as you go, you can earn little certificates and skills along the way, and you can build and combine them in, tons of different areas. Like I have a relatively professional networking certification from Cisco, and I don't use a lot of that stuff. Some of it I use at a fundamental level to understand, some of the cyber implications, like how the network works, like access control. But a lot of it I don't use anymore. Like I could have gone further down that certification path, and I didn't. I kind of pivoted because, cyber is fun and it's kind of the hot topic right now.
Yeah, what do you think? Obviously, everyone's has their hot takes on AI. What does AI do to jobs like yours?
Two jobs like mine
Right. Is there a worry? I mean, people
that's going
talk
to
about,
replace us all.
right, it replaces
Yeah.
all. What is your take on that? If someone's thinking I shouldn't go into cybersecurity because AI will basically be my cybersecurity in 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think anytime a technology does something we didn't think it could do before, people freak out and they think it's gonna replace everything. But all of those revolutions took a lot of time. And this is the same. I thought that because the AI that we see is really more LLMs, large language models. And so it's very focused on like the written word. That's where they
Mhm.
do all their studies and they build those models off of. So I thought, stuff that had to do with written word would get replaced fastest, like lawyers. But look, like I don't know if there's like a single example of a lawyer, losing their business. It seems like what might happen is, the older folks, those people running law firms will hire fewer people and expect them to be more competent, and expect them to use
Mhm.
those large language models so that they do the work of, what used to be 5 interns is now done by one. But it's certainly not like an overnight revolution, and I think the same is true with, cyber. I have I can jump into this slide with kind of things that we have seen happen so far with uh AI. And it's all it might even be a little too not high level, but really specific and kind of technical. But it's not like some massive trend so far. So I put some bullet points in a presentation that I made for our board recently. But I listed specific trends where we are seeing AI do something already right now. So you can look around. It's not instantly replacing jobs, but what is it doing? Or, based on what, a simple proof of concept was done. So, okay, where do we know that it's going to change really soon? So I wrote down a couple things. There's automation in identifying exploitable code. And so you run an AI and it says, hey, here's a new vulnerability for your electric toothbrush that no one knew existed before. Like, that's awesome. No one knew it existed. That's a 0 day. And there's a vulnerability and it can be exploited in some kind of way. So that's really interesting. But quite frankly, there's more cybersecurity professionals who are defenders like myself than there are attackers. So using AI to help find vulnerabilities is just like all the vulnerability management tools that we already have that help us find vulnerabilities. So like that's actually going to benefit us, the defenders. Um, AI can automate code and file analysis. Same thing. There are more people doing code and file analysis as defenders than there are attackers. It can automate the development of exploits. So that benefits the attackers. I mean, quite frankly, it can, if it finds and it can develop an exploit faster, that takes, that manual process that of exploiting a 0 day, which a couple of years ago was, many months. And now it feels like either a handful of months or weeks, or in some cases, even days, where a vulnerability is discovered and then the exploit is developed for it and it starts being used in the wild. AI can possibly smart sort data. So for example, this definitely benefits both. Like I'm not sure who this will benefit more, the attackers or the defenders, but it'd be useful for an attacker in the case where they get into a company like mine, a financial firm, and we have, terabytes, if not petabytes of data. And instead of extracting it all, they use an AI to say, oh, that file's good, that file's useful, and so they grab the most useful things they can first. I mean, but obviously, for business use cases, you can imagine smarter data sorting really benefits, defenders or just business people way more than it, benefits those malicious actors. Um, Somewhere where there's the most prominent example of attacker benefit is in phishing. So now, because these large language models are so contextually relevant, they can do quick, contextual, accurate phishing content.
And,
They
and
can,
explain a little bit more what phishing is, compared to I think we all got trained, but what qualifies as phishing versus hacking and other
yeah,
malware type activities?
yeah. So phishing spelled with a PH. I don't remember what the phonics are behind it in particular, but obviously it mimics, the word like fishing, like you go fishing in a lake for fish with a fishing pole. And it originally it falls under a I guess social hack you'd call, which is pretexting, which is often just lying in a very particular way in order to try and manipulate someone into giving you something. So when people fish, we think of like those Nigerian scam emails for, that everyone got in like the 2000s or 2010s. But now with AI, that can be way more advanced. So someone could have AI look at your Facebook and look at your LinkedIn and scrape how I, Levi, talk. And then they could use that or information they have about me and do it automatically through that language learning consumption and then regurgitation. They could send out emails that are like exactly in my tone and exactly how I talk. Um, there was actually a news story, I think like this week, where a company lost some tens of millions of dollars because someone had made a fake AI video that they showed to an employee at a company that was like a VP or something. And it was execs above them. They were all in this video together. In the video that appeared to be like a Zoom call, they were talking to each other and then they said, yeah, send the money. They told that, more junior employee to send the money. And then they said, we got to go. And they jumped off the Zoom call. So the employee who sent this just thought he got called into a quick call. He literally saw people he knew, like their faces and voices, And we don't quite have the technology to make that, instantaneous. So that was like pre-generated, it was pre-recorded, if you will. But it was totally fake. They had used they trained an AI using news footage of all those executives and then made it say what they wanted to. Obviously, it's not advanced enough to where they could dynamically react and talk with that employee. But like, it's not unreasonable to say that that won't be coming, quickly in the future. It's pretty wild. So what that'll lead to is like we'll need better authentication with our video calls. The same way that you go to a website and you see the green lock and you know that it genuinely is Microsoft that you're visiting or something. We're
Yeah,
gonna
this is pretty frightening stuff. Pretty frightening stuff. But I
yeah.
mean, I asked earlier, obviously, what is AI going to do to your job?
Mhm.
Um, I mean, a lot of this is still human interaction, and maybe could you talk a little bit about we talk a lot about these very sophisticated hacking schemes and things, but what is the biggest way that bad guys, for lack of a better term, get into a company?
Yeah. Yeah. So two questions there. The first one, instead of I kind of listed some technical capabilities, but like you asked, if I was going to say how has AI affected your job, right now it's my Google replacement, in general. And I try to get technical with it. Like I have it, list sources, and so I can go see those original sources is helpful because I don't quite trust it. We all know that like AI has a problem with hallucination, and it also has a problem with just it's not a person, it can't like learn something and it can't create anything. It can only cite and amalgamate, information that it has access to in the same way.
Right. It's predicting the next word, right? It's a large language model. So
Yeah, in the same way that I won't be able to gain a piece of information in by searching it in Google if Google doesn't have access to it. If it's either behind a paywall of some kind or if it's written down in a book, sitting on a shelf somewhere, like I can't Google and find that information. It's not there. Same with AI. So for now, I mean it's a Google replacement. And I still use Google a lot, just to do search, but um it's been interesting to see all of the ways that people are proposing that it could add productivity to our company. I deal a little bit with we have like an AI council to try and kind of navigate this. And I wouldn't say that I know of anything crazy profound that's come out of it. I think they're more like my organization is kind of conservative. I think they're more just like looking for risk than they are trying to, jump on the trend and they'll let someone else jump on it and make the blunders and learn from them before they implement it. So it's yeah, the integration, like I said, is going slow.
what kind of stuff is on the AI council? Is that there at the business you work at?
It's no, that it's a literal group of people at our company that investigate how we might use AI at our company. It's kind of like the Jedi Council, if you will. No, but
Sure.
there's people from cybersecurity, from disaster recovery, from IT infrastructure. There's people from all over that are on that council. I don't know how many people they have, but they're pretty much looking for ways of how could AI be useful to us? How could it be a risk to us?
Yeah. So if people are thinking, I want to go into cybersecurity, right? They think that what you talked about is interesting. Could you
Yeah,
kind of talk about the entry paths and the career options that exist for someone in cybersecurity? Because obviously it's a big career field, and saying I want to go into
yeah,
cybersecurity won't get you very far.
yeah. It, I I'm if you're young enough, I'm tempted to say go do one of the degrees or something like it. Certainly some kind of condensed course. There are like 1 year courses where all you do is study and they get you to pass like a number of key exams. I think those would be phenomenal. The exams are certainly, respected. If you're past that point, or you say like I don't really have the time or money to take 6+ months off and just study something and get a new skill, Then I'd say you have to pivot and just get into IT however you can. And what I mean, a lot of people do is they just take their personal time and study and try and get their company to pay for an exam for them. But it's like you go to work and then you go home and do a little bit of study every once in a while, maybe do like a sprint and get an exam or just slowly work at it for months and go get those exams. There's some good exams. I'm looking at the books on my shelf, but like there's A plus, Cloud plus, Server plus. Those all come from CompTIA. I have a ton of books on pen testing and malware analysis that are more like textbooks and they don't even connect to an exam. Then so that's like a governing organization, but then there's also vendor specific. So like Cisco is really well respected in the network world. They dominate with awesome, network certifications. So like their certifications lean Cisco heavy. They're not vendor agnostic, but they teach universal networking principles and how to do it in Cisco equipment. So I know I think the second managed service provider I worked for, again, just sort of as a help desk person, but I was a higher tier. I was actually on the connectivity team, which meant like the networking team. They said, hey, you can come on board, but you got to get this certification if you do, within X amount of time. And I said, okay. And that's what we did. So that was great.
And what are the I mean, what are kind of the ways that you can get into this, whether it's Reddit or Facebook groups, professional organizations, if someone's interested, beyond just going to school for this kind of things, what
Yeah.
organizations, groups can they join?
Yeah, I think if you were to say I'm going to take 6 months off work, sit at home in my basement and study for these three exams, I think that would be incredibly difficult. I'm not saying that's impossible, someone out there can do it, but without mentors and without a social network where you can tie, interesting people to knowledge that you want and, make kind of your friends your work and mix those together. I desperately think that you need that. So a lot of places have like hacking clubs of some kind. Our my city has one that is like a sort of a spinoff from Secure KC, Secure Kansas City. So it's all about cybersecurity or info security professionals meeting. The like a lot of these groups meet monthly or more. So if you can go there, make some friends, I mean you're gonna have access to 50 people like me, all who have a different journey, and you can find who you click with and what might interest you.
And would the best way to do that just be getting on Google,
I
searching for
think so, yeah.
professional organizations? Yeah. So if you're in the Midwest and that Secure KC sounds like one great group.
Mhm.
I mean, do you need to be in the Bay Area? Do you need to be in New York City to do this career?
Yeah, absolutely. Here in Iowa where I live, we actually don't have computers. I have to write my code on parchment paper. No, it's sort of interesting. We kind of see that like return to office, after COVID finally died down. We see a lot of people being pulled back into offices, but the concept that hey, we're gonna have a remote employee and they're gonna do this specific thing and I don't really care where they live is certainly not going away. And the cost savings that those companies in those two hip areas on the coast get everywhere else is great. They love that. It's no, you certainly don't have to be there.
Yeah, that's I think I've obviously, followed your career just as a friend, but it's been amazing to me to see how far you've gotten, in Des Moines and with no qualms about having to be in Des Moines, right?
Mm.
Um, Obviously, it is tough to write your code on parchment paper. Um, being able to, I think your brother's behind the computer there, turning the crank to turn the power on.
Yeah, yeah. So it doesn't shut off. Yeah.
Right. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, I think a lot of people worry about that, right? That like, oh, will I be able to be somewhere besides San Francisco, Austin, New York? Um, and you found a lot of success without having to compromise too much, without having to make too many
Yeah.
trade-offs.
Yeah.
So yeah, we want to keep doing this every few weeks. What are some of the topics that people can look forward to if they continue to watch the series?
Mm. Um, ooh, that's a great question. So I'm kind of looking over this report that I made. I just did this big presentation together that's for a board that's the threat landscape overview, but I talked specifically about the financial service industry, the ideal attack profile of an attacker and attackee, some common known ransomware groups and how they've changed and why we saw kind of a significant dip in ransomware in 2022 and why it's back up to an all-time high. I think they said 2023 was over like 1.1 billion just in ransoms, not in even like cost to recover, which is much greater. I mean, multiple times greater. You've always got fun, malicious nation states that we can talk about. I don't see that, going away anytime soon. And of course, to get like, if you're kind of into it already and you're like, yeah, I got my A plus certification or my, security plus, and those are very entry level. But if you got those and you're like, you want to get into the technical nitty gritty, we can talk about attack methods and tactics, how those have changed. Phishing, I mean, I know we mentioned, but phishing is huge. It's still, very close to, if not the number one way that stuff gets in, bad stuff. And generative AI is going to continue to have a huge impact on that. And then, my whole job is like, what are our mitigations? How do we protect against these things? So the various tools, technologies, vendors that protect us and how they do that, all the way to from software that's installed on your endpoints like your laptop, all the way to, really obscure stuff like, what is, portaling protocols through DNS to try and slip by firewalls so you can exfiltrate data. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
this will be great. I'm really excited to continue to, hear your perspectives and continue to have you working with us. I think we're going to be able to learn a lot. So we'll try to do this kind of bi-weekly, and some of these will be live where people can ask questions, and we'll put those up. Some of this will just be, yeah, I mean, Levi talking through cybersecurity and what that looks like, right?
Yeah. This will
So
be good. I enjoy the sit rep folks. It's always nice to see soldiers again. So
yeah, and what are you going to be drinking tonight? If you had to, maybe you're not drinking tonight, but if you had to make yourself a cocktail.
what I have is an element packet in some water. I'm not just like snorting it. But this weekend there will be old fashions with bourbon.
Yeah. All right, and people are passing through Des Moines. I'm sure you're always open for grabbing some food or hosting a
Yeah,
cocktail.
I know for those of you that know, when I did some of the big fireside chats, if you had a question, you emailed me. It did not take long for me to reply and hand out my number and just say like, hey, let's have a phone call. So I truly could not even name most of the people or where they were from that I talked to because there were so many. A lot of cool people,
That's
but
awesome.
yeah.
Well, great. Yeah, we'll put your email or your LinkedIn contact down in the show notes so you don't get any spam. I'm sure a cybersecurity professional doesn't want your email
Yeah.
being stuck on a YouTube link for scrapers to come through. But we'll put a link to your LinkedIn. People can shoot you a message there. I'm sure and get in contact.
Yeah, that sounds great. And thanks a lot for having me.
All right. Thanks, Levi.